So hello everybody. I'm going to do chapter 13, and this has got probably almost 100 slides. So I'll break this up into several bite-sized chunks for you for the winter. Remember, there's a lot of chapters to be covered in a very short period of time. So we're going to talk about leverage and capital structure in this chapter today. And leverage just refers to the effects that fixed costs have on the returns that shareholders earn. So basically, higher leverage generally results in higher but more volatile returns. Okay. So the fixed costs are costs that, as it says, do not rise and fall with changes in a company's sales. So your rent is a fixed cost, right? The company's rent is a fixed cost. They have to pay these costs whether, and you have to pay them whether you lose your job or business conditions are better or they decline over time. But leverage is a magnifier, and that's the word. Leverage means, magnify return and risks. If you think about leverage, try to pick up a block with your hand, but then go over there with a crowbar and wedge it, and you're giving it leverage, right? So you're giving it more force. Okay, so that's leverage. So that's the one term. And then capital structure is the other term. And that's the mix of long-term debt and equity maintained by the firm. So the question is, what percentage of debt do they have, long-term bonds, and what percentage is equity? So those are the two main things we'll talk about. So we're going to talk about operating leverage and financial leverage here. And those two combined will be known as total leverage. Okay. So operating leverage, as it says, is concerned with the relationship between the firm's sales, and you're going to go from the top of the income statement, sales, down to EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes. Everyone should know that nomenclature, right? Earnings before interest and taxes is EBIT, and that's known as also known as operating profits. And then financial leverage is going to take us the rest of the way down the income statement, and that'll take us from EBIT to earnings per share. So total leverage will be the combined effect, as I said, of the sum of these two, all right? So we have operating leverage, financial leverage, and total leverage. All right, so here's the way it looks, right? This is a good slide. So here's operating leverage, right? Taking you from sales down to EBIT. And then here is financial leverage, taking you from EBIT to earnings per share. And that will give you total leverage. All right, so let me just take a sip of my coffee as it's about 5:30 in the morning. All right, so then we're going to discuss break-even analysis. And the question is the definition of break-even analysis is indicate the level of operations necessary to cover all costs and to evaluate the profitability associated with various levels of sales. So basically, you're going to sell, if you're selling some kind of widgets, right? The question is, after what widget do you start breaking even, right? Breaking even. So it's a break-even analysis, right? So the operating break-even point is known where EBIT equals 0. Okay? So you're going to sell so many widgets to the point where EBIT equals 0. Okay, and then so the first step in finding this break-even point is to divide the cost of goods sold and operating expenses into fixed and variable costs. So, variable costs are costs that are going to vary directly with sales volume. Sometimes the more you sell of something, right, the cheaper you can lower the price, right? People say that to you if you buy something. Get 10 of your friends to buy a car and you'll get your car cheaper. That kind of thing. Okay, so here's operating leverage again. Here's sales revenue, and here's EBIT, and here's fixed operating costs. And here's your variable operating costs. So they use symbols here, right? It's algebraic representation. Product times the price times the quantity, the fixed cost, variable cost times quantity. And you subtract these from your sales and you get EBIT. It's pretty basic here, the math. So if you rewrite this equation, take this equation we just saw, right, and just keep rewriting it, and we're going to set EBIT equal to 0, right, and that's going to give us where we said our break-even point is, and we end solve for Q, and this is the quantity where we break even, okay? So you notice how we're setting EBIT equal to 0. And here's an example of that, and Cheryl's got posters she's selling. She has fixed operating costs of $2,500, sale price is $10 per poster, and its variable operating cost is $5 per poster. What is the firm's break-even point? And you plug them in and you get basically 500 posters she's got to sell. That should be pretty easy for everyone. If you have any questions, email me. Alright, so here's the break-even analysis, right? Here's the sales revenue line, right? Here's the operating cost. So you're at a loss here, and here you're at your EBIT, right? And right here's your operating break-even point, right? 500 units. See that? So this graph shows graphically what we just did on the previous slide. Alright, so this is a nice slide to go over as certain things increase and decrease, how they're going to affect the operating break-even point. And, so this is an increase, right, in these variables, and I have a nice note that if you decrease them, it's going to have the opposite effect. Okay, so everyone should go over this, and it should be clear if you just look at the equations. Alright, so this again is basically showing you if you start selling more posters, if things change, right? If things change here, if they make different constraints. Increase the fixed operating costs, and then that's one. See that right here? Change the sale price, and then change the variable operating cost. So there's the 3 different scenarios, right? And then doing them all at once, right? All 3 at once. So there's actually 4 scenarios. Sorry about that. You see right here, right? You're changing all of them. And it tells you how many you have to sell to break even and with different changes. All right, so here's a personal finance example here, which I won't go over. You can go over this about break even on a new device installed on his car. How long will it take him to break even? All right, so we did break even. All right, so operating leverage, again, is the use of fixed operating costs to magnify the effects, as we said already, right, of changes in sales to the changes in your EBIT, right? And they show you that again. And again, here's different change. Now they show you for different quantities, right? If we change the quantities, your EBIT now is $5,000. Here, your EBIT's $2,500. So you can see the quantities are changing here, and you're riding up and down on the sales curve, and then that tells you the cost and revenues. So and we'll go over this a little carefully now. So here's the different sales in units, right? This was the base, right? This is your base sales, 1,000. Now if that goes down by 500, or I can go up by 500, okay? So you're selling it for $10 a piece, right? So here's your revenue. Multiply this by 10. Here's your variable operating costs, right? Which and they tell you what the variable it's $5 per unit. So they tell you what each number is down here, right? And then the fixed costs don't change. That's $2,500, right? So here's your EBIT. So your EBIT for different, now notice something here that's really interesting. Your sales only went down here by 50%. Everyone see that? It only went down by 50%. But how did it affect your EBIT? Your EBIT went down to 0 from 2,500. So you see how it's magnified? A 50% change in sales gives you a 100% change in EBIT, and likewise a 50% gain in sales gives you a 100% gain in EBIT. Okay, so please go over this slide very carefully. All right. All right, so I'm going to stop there, and I'll pick up on this slide over here about the degree of operating leverage. Alrighty.